What is up, fellas sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. The Washington Wizards are up next, which means we get to speak with Matt Moderno. He hosts the Believe in Wizards podcast with former Wizard Jahadi White, and he is also a writer for Bullets Forever. He does fantastic work. Love listening to that podcast, dropping in throughout the regular season. Excited to talk to him about a team that just has so many. I've said this a lot this year. They just have so many dudes. The Wizards just have so many dudes. But first, and most importantly, Matt, how the heck are you doing?
I'm great. We said this before recording, but I'll say it for the people listening. If you've checked these out in the past, I'm usually kind of a Debbie Downer, only because the Wizards have been bad most of my adult life. But this might be the most excited I've ever been about a Wizards team that may not win 20 games. So I'm excited to get into the roster here and talk about all those dudes you alluded to.
Those are kind of the fun teams to root for, where they're
So.
they're like the perfect amount of like the right kind of bad. Maybe not the
hmm
perfect, but they're the right kind of bad. And it feels
Yeah.
like that's what the Wizards like. That's the direction they're headed in.
We're usually the wrong kind of bad, old and expensive and not very good. So to be young and about to have some money and not be very good is pretty great.
And to be fair, because you and I have both been pretty complimentary of the process, and like since
Sure.
the front office has changed over. So,
hmm
but this is like a year where it feels like there's stakes coming after the year, so it makes this
Exactly.
year more interesting.
hmm
But I want to start here. So we're entering year 3 of this rebuild. How have you felt about the navigation and execution of it so far?
It's funny, like, I don't know, maybe this is how every fan is about their own team, but I have a tendency to nitpick with them a little bit. But overall, like, more good than bad, and I considerably like the way they're going about it more than I like the way the previous two general managers went about it, especially toward the end of both of those tenures. So, like we talked about this before. I didn't love the Denny Avdia trade. I still wouldn't have gone about it. I love getting Bub Carrington. I think there were probably other ways to make that happen. We'll see what happens with that 29 pick. So giving up some of your young guys to have to get the other dudes, I didn't love, like giving Daniel Gafford up when they did. I really like Kyshawn George, so like it ended up working out pretty well for me. But I felt like there were maybe other ways to. So it's splitting hairs on a few of those things, but I'm just ultimately happy with where they are. And there were a few things like, well, they didn't flip Tyus Jones at the deadline one year where there were 2 second-round picks on the table, so I'm going to give him a hard time over that. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not really that big a deal. So more good than bad. And they've accumulated intriguing guys, and ultimately, I think this comes down to however many of them pop. I personally, well, I mean, we're going to go guy by guy here, but like, they're all interesting. One of them could turn into like a dude, but I still feel like they need to get the dude, like capital T, capital D, the dude. And I don't know that that guy's on this roster yet, but the I don't know, the outline of a really good team is starting to form, I think.
Yeah, that's what's tough but also intriguing about their situation. I think you could probably point to, depending on how you feel about Tre Johnson, 3 guys
Mm,
who might, in theory, as of right now, no, I don't think you would call them the dude, but any
sure.
one of them could turn into the dude. But it's also what makes their future fascinating, because they have basically infinite amounts of cap
Yeah.
space next year as of now. Do we read into that at all as, oh, they're going to try and take some major steps forward next summer? Or is that just kind of like the byproduct of they're not going to be hesitant to burn that flexibility in season, which is they won't have cap space, but they'd be willing to take on money that spills into their books over the next couple of years?
I think the real magic trick that this front office pulled off was convincing owner Ted Leonsis that, like, you have to rip this down to the studs and just like bottom out completely to actually rebuild this thing properly. And you have to give us a couple years to do it. My big fear that entire time was that eventually they would get impatient if they don't start to show some signs of growth. And you look at it a little bit with like this latest of the OKC rebuilds, like that's the model they clearly want to go for. They were just pretty bad for a handful of years. And then you just saw a jump one year of like, oh, here's an extra 20 wins they got by adding a key veteran here, and like guys just sort of naturally developed. So I don't know if they'll go like all in, the next free agency here, but I do think you might start to see here's a big upgrade, or maybe we consolidate a couple of these guys, to go add a particular trade target that they couldn't have gotten otherwise. So and you want to have the room to take on some of that salary. So I think it's a long-winded way of saying I don't think like they're really going to fast forward the timetable a ton, but they're not going to want to be another 15-win team again the season after this one. So if they're not like young and fun and competing for at least like a play-in, I do. That's when I think there's going to be like real trouble for them from an ownership perspective.
Because I was going to ask you that too. There has to be a level of amongst the fan base existential dread that like Ted Leonsis is going to come in and force them to fast track this after 3,
Yeah.
what should be pretty bad years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that should be the fear from the fan base, whether it is or not. I don't have a great sense for at the moment. I think everyone just has like their sort of honeymoon, rose-colored glasses on about the front office, so they're not thinking about they all have a boss ultimately, and like at some point they're going to have to be accountable to him to show that growth and to start to sell some tickets. Like NBA teams, I think you can be a little bit more patient now because for him it's still like an asset that's accumulating, long-term value, but it's just hard to have a totally empty arena, and they're putting some money into it. The city's putting some money into it to rehab it. They had this big public feud with the city and trying to move out of the city. So at some point, if DC is going to pour money back into this arena, they probably also want some return on investment of like put butts in seats and people are in the surrounding area. So they're not going to be like the worst team in the league again in 2028. He won't let that happen. It's whether there can be enough organic growth to not lock yourself into some bad contracts. And I forgot one thing I just want to circle back to. Just look at what's going on with Bradley Beal, where a team had to buy him out this summer. And you have to give this front office like even extra credit for that's really the amazing thing here is that they got off of that deal to get to this cap space. Like there was a world where they could have still been locked into that deal, right now, and that's crazy.
Sometimes things just come down to having Matt Ishby as number, and the Wizards knew that. So
that's smart to have him on speed dial, I think.
Before kind of digging into the players, what have you taken away so far, philosophically, stylistically, anything about Brian Keefe at the head coach spot, and how difficult is it to evaluate them, not when they're just going through this part of their life cycle where they're rebuilding, but also when there has been some roster churn when it comes to the veterans?
I'm just pretty indifferent on Washington's equivalent of Brett Brown, I think. Like to me, he's the guy that's just sort of minding the store while the tanking, rebuilding process is going on, or deconstruction phase, or whatever term they were using for it. I can't imagine him being the guy here long term when they turn this thing around. Wizards fans, I think, kind of collectively are out on him because maybe he was slow to play a few of the rookies ahead of some of the older guys last year. So I think the majority of fans would say that they're not huge fans. You just can't tell. I mean, he seems to be a good enough player development focused coach that some of these guys are starting to show some steps. My one major nitpick with him is he was asked about, hey, you've got a lot of guys on this roster that can't shoot. Who is the Wizards shooting coach? And he gave this very flippant, like, what do you mean? We all know how to shoot, so we can all teach people how to shoot equally. And if you're a front office that's drafted all these like physically gifted, toolsy guys, but none of them are particularly good shooters other than like maybe Tre Johnson being the exception, I would throw money at bringing on as many elite shooting coaches as I could to this staff, particularly because it is the swing skill for everyone on this roster pretty much. So that PO'd me a little bit personally, but overall, he's just like perfectly fine, I think. And I bet they give him like 1 year when they start to be good again before they bring in like the guy to lead them, back into like playoff relevance.
He did seem to work some nice little wonders with Jordan Poole there, and then they were able to trade him. So maybe that's they don't really have a contract on the books that they need to view through that lens this season, though.
Very true.
So let's start talking about some of the players. So let's start with Alex Sarr. What most stood out to you from him during his rookie season?
I think last year was just like what you expected him to be good at, he was pretty good at, and what you expected him to be bad at, he was pretty bad at. Like it just sort of played out like I think most people who watched him play a good amount pre-draft thought it would play out. He's a big man who doesn't really do big man things, and they used him a lot as a stretch big, but he hasn't really shown he can actually shoot yet. But there was like a month here where it was really good for a while, and you saw more of the flashes. So I think we're still in that like see some flashes stage of things, and I think somebody we're going to have to be patient with as a fan base offensively. I think this is a dude that has like just chaos agent defensive potential as somebody who can cover a ton of ground. And I think this is something you guys have talked about, of just like there's some rangy dudes from like this core that I think the defensive blueprint and infrastructure is going to be ahead of the offensive stuff. But when you're that big that you can switch out on the guards capably, or, you know, block somebody big at the rim, like it's you see enough of the vision to be like, ooh, okay, and you just don't worry about the efficiency until like year 3 or 4 at this point, because it's not going to be good, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think because some of the questions had been like, are they going to try and maybe play him alongside another big? And their roster just telegraphs that like that's not. And I think defensively, probably still needs to get stronger, but
Sure.
like the range you mentioned that he can give you and just the defensive playmaking overall,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's spot on. I think he's probably like he's gonna be the biggest mismatch offensively as a 5.
Yeah.
And so I think you mentioned the stretch where the 3-point shot was going down. Is there anything like the one thing, if you could like wish upon a star and say like Alex Sarr did this year, is it, oh, he was pancaking dudes on screens, or he was finishing through contact and at the rim a little better? Is it what would it be?
To me, he'll have a slower guy on him, and he'll have the ball like 17 feet from the hoop, and he'll back up to shoot a 3. And that drives me a little crazy. I also just don't want to see my 7-footer take like a 12-foot floater or even a 3-foot floater. I want to see him just try to put guys on posters a little bit more. And he'll dunk sometimes, and you're like, oh shit. Like, I actually didn't know I forgot he could do that, because it'll be a while, in between. So like, I think just it's maybe a more between the ears mentality kind of thing of, I'd love to see him have a little bit more of that swagger. It's the thing I hoped would rub off from Jordan Poole onto both he and Coulibaly, of just like, be psycho, I can take over a game, a rational confidence guy, even if you can't. I'd be okay with him trying and failing at that than like never kind of trying it. So he strikes me more as just like a complementary piece offensively. There's some like really cool short roll passing stuff that he does. But yeah, the screen one is actually interesting. I'd love to see him just like demolish a guy on a screen. He kind of slips everything, but that's important, and he does those kind of things well. I think the model is probably, you mentioned it with the roster, like long term, I think the best version of him is like this a poor man's Anthony Davis kind of mold, where maybe you start a game with him next to a traditional center to eat up some of the pounding, but like you can't. The best version of him is closing games at the 5. He gets offensive mismatches. He's not going to get played off the floor and hunted defensively. And I think you're seeing them now trying to give him as many of those growing pains as the 5 early, so that when they are relevant again, in the postseason, he's just ready to hit the ground running as like the lone big. And I say that to Wizards fans, and I get well, look at Cleveland. They're doing the Twin Towers. It can work here. But I don't know. Has Cleveland done anything in the playoffs yet to show us that model actually works in the postseason? So to me, I would keep, focusing on like the him at the 5 mold, and just have like long, rangy, switchable guys around him.
The other thing is that you can't just say go find Jared Allen.
Yeah,
That's not like a big that you could just say, all right, go get him. So it's
Yep.
just like, yeah, if you can get him, sure, then you could talk about it. But it's tough to just say like I don't want to see Alex Sarr and Daniel Gafford together as like an
We may go
example.
get Jared Allen in 2028 when he's on the downswing of things. Like that. That's a Wizards move, it feels like.
So you've mentioned a lot of stuff that I think can contribute to what's been for a big man, just a lack of volume at the
Yeah.
rim for him.
Mhm.
Is that a physical thing, or is it more of a physical thing, a decision-making thing? Could he stand to be more aggressive when he's doing his grab and goes? Is it the takeoff points? Is it the spacing environment in which he's being brought up? Like, what do you view as the biggest contributing factor to
Yes.
that?
I mean,
Moving on.
Yeah. It just, I think you nailed some piece of all of it. It really is kind of a perfect storm of those things. Like I mentioned the shooting, right? Like there aren't snipers around him that create these lanes for him to drive by a bigger guy and actually go attack the rim. He hasn't also really had, like, I was not a Jordan Poole guy the first year. I thought he was markedly better last year, but I still wouldn't say he was like
Couldn't take the Pelicans to the 4 seed like they apparently believe.
Hey, we'll see. I mean, more power to him if he can do it. Give him that contract bonus, but they still sort of lacking, and this is the piece I hope they can add on the rebuild, is sort of that explosive collapse a defense, put everybody on their heels offensive guy, someone to like probe into the lane. Who's like the dynamic pick and roll partner with him long term? And I think there's a lot of picking and popping because he's playing next to a guard that they don't really have to, they don't have that kind of gravity, so he just floats out and gets out of the way. Whereas if someone's, if two people have to kind of account for this dynamic point guard, it would leave Sarr a little more open to roll to the rim, be more of a vertical spacer and things like that. We just don't see much. But you get like a flash every once in a while, and played a few minutes next to Tre Johnson, who again, not like this spring-loaded offensive guy, but because he's so crafty, there were just a few moments, even in just like summer league, where like, oh, okay, like there might be some fun stuff we can do here with him this year.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to be as high. I was pretty low on Alex Sarr, actually, when he was coming out of the draft. Sure. And now, just because it's redraft season, I'm like very Reed Shepherd pilled. I know he didn't play a lot last year, but I would take Alex Sarr, I think, no lower than 2 in a redraft, which is where he went. So let's not really give praise, but I think the Wizards made the right pick. We're going to look back and say, right, like that was the right pick there. And you also, hell of a segue from you mentioned some things why I find Bilal Coulibaly actually so fascinating. We joke around here how much we love Bilal Coulibaly, the basketball player, but I've seen a lot of people kind of say, like, no, he's going to need to be like more of this 3-and-D guy on offense. Yeah. And you just mentioned something about having someone who can be on the ball, getting downhill, drawing in defenders. Mm-hmm. When I look at this roster, I don't like someone who can generate that like paint touch, like with the ball in their hands. Maybe it's Tre Johnson now, but like Bilal Coulibaly might just be their best bet there, which is why I think it's too soon to say they need him to be more of a 3-and-D guy on the offensive end.
I think that it was hard just to like really evaluate him last year. It was kind of like a lukewarm start. I mentioned maybe some emphasis on some of the veterans to start the year from Brian Keefe, and then at some point either he got more comfortable or they made more of a decision to just like give him the ball and let him try things. It just there was like a month where you're like, oh shit, could he win most improved player in the league? Like he just had enough stuff going on that it was like, oh, okay, I see what you just mentioned in him. Then he gets hurt and it wasn't kind of the same, and then he ultimately misses the end of the year. So I think last year was almost kind of like a throwaway year from a real evaluation, and this is the year where we need to see more of those things. I think the handle has to get tighter. This was always sort of my nitpick with Deni Avdija, and when we did these previous seasons, like we were kind of split on him a little bit. It's like, for me, it was if he could shoot enough, he can maximize the other things he can do. Like if Coulibaly can get downhill, he can do some of this creative passing and collapse the paint, but guys are just kind of sagging off of him a little bit too much right now. So the handle either has to get tighter so he can just drive by some dudes, or he's got to be able to shoot enough, or realistically both. But I'm not out on that. I think some Wizards fans are a little more out on that sort of offensive potential for him. But I don't know if he's Jaden McDaniels. That's still not a bad draft pick to me at number 7 in that particular draft.
No, not at all. I wouldn't be out on that. I don't know if I would predict him like hitting that highest end outcome as an offensive player, but we also have to chalk up to is so you go through your rookie year where you're just not, at least not until the end of the season, you weren't being used in the same way. And then all of a sudden they're just shooting up your pick and roll volume as one example. Like that's going to take, and you mentioned the injury, that just takes some adjusting. So I think you're right that this is kind of the year where we know kind of like his floor, or where he could just be like a really valuable 3-and-D player. But I still think his ceiling is like TBD in a very good mystery box way, to where, no, you can't guarantee anything, but like, let's not rule out anything here just yet.
I think he could like genuinely make an all defensive team. Maybe not this year, but not too long after that. Like I think he has the potential to be like that good. And if that's all you get from him, that's still a really like exciting complimentary guy to have on a roster. And just, maybe the chances of him hitting that maximum outcome offensively have like dropped a little bit in my opinion. They're still not zero, and he could definitely take a big jump. Like, this is a dude you almost have to throw away the rookie year because he just wasn't even supposed to be in the league that year. Like, he was still a guy that was projected to be a year away from that. So he's like got a year and a half of seasoning, and it really doesn't even feel like that yet. So I think this is really the big year to just truly get a sense for what kind of player he could be and how they envision him too.
And I look, and I whatever version of himself he becomes, like a more steadier three ball is going to be important. If you want him to be the 3-and-D guy, the three ball arguably becomes more important if you're not going to rely on him to do some of the ball handling stuff. And that I don't know why. Okay, so he's at 28% or whatever it was on catch and shoot threes last year, and I still kind of just believe he'll get to maybe not OG Anunoby levels of that reliable as a three guy, but maybe a Jaden McDaniels to where there's peaks and valleys, but at the end of the day, he might be shooting 36 or 37% on threes, hopefully with more volume than Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, agreed.
Tre Johnson. I was not a Tre Johnson guy coming into the draft. I'm just not anyone's guy coming out of the draft. He sold me a bit, like in summer league, like the shooting, like, oh no, like that's going to translate really freaking well. What are your early impressions of him, and what type of role can we expect him to have off rip for Washington?
I wasn't a huge Tre Johnson guy early in the year last year at Texas, and then got a little more into it, and then got to see him in person at the end of the year in the tournament, and I was like, oh, okay, like there's a little something extra here that I didn't realize, and I just thought like that summer league performance, like the Wizards have not set the world on fire at summer league, despite having so many guys from their actual roster that play on the team. Like Alex Sarr probably had the worst summer league game in summer league history, which says something. I thought Tre Johnson was just like everything you would have wanted him to be in that sample size of just, he was like a dynamic offensive player. He can shoot, he can drive, he's creative. I think eventually you'll see more passing from him too, just based on
that would be
role.
Great.
Yeah, that's the role he's going to have to play to be able to play those minutes. What is he long term? Is he only a 2? If he can't be a playmaker and he's got to be off ball a little bit more, then maybe he only profiles as like an elite sixth man kind of guy, microwave scorer. I think that's still not a bad player. I think that's probably worst case scenario for him personally, is just like this Lou Williams-y sixth man of the year kind of guy. But I think, if the passing comes along and he can be, part of a two-headed monster in the backcourt with another guy that does some playmaking as well, there's something there. And I think he'll unlock a lot of these other guys just from a consistent shooting perspective. I get why they moved on from Jordan Poole when they did, just to kind of free up some of that role for Tre. So they may take a step back offensively just because Poole had so much gravity. But just giving those reps to Poole or to Johnson this year, I think is going to be important. But I do think he needs like another guy next to him in the backcourt. And so whether it's he and Bub makes sense, Bub Carrington makes sense long term together, or one of them's a sixth man, or you can go get a Darren Peterson from Kansas in the draft after this year. Like somebody's got to unlock that. Could be an elite wing, could be another elite guard. But I think I see Tre as more like an option 2 kind of guy on a really good team offensively. And if that's the case, like, he's pretty darn good.
It does seem, and it's way too early to say this, it does seem that if he's going to make some type of playmaking leap or impact, it's not going to be as you would trust Bub Carrington to slow down the half court offense and maybe play make out of that. With Tre Johnson, it feels like it's going to be very reactive. He got downhill, and that's what he's doing. Maybe not, but like that is kind of my read. But when you can shoot and score like he can, that's if you can get him to pass out of drives, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's going to be enough, I think, especially if the guys around him show they can actually make enough shots to do that.
What were your thoughts about the Cam Whitmore trade, and what are you kind of, I mentioned perimeter players who can get paint touches on the ball. Sure. He can certainly do that, but he is not going to pass on those paint touches, which is why I singled out Coulibaly there.
Yeah, I think he makes actually a lot of sense for this roster, and it was a guy Wizards fans wanted a lot out of that particular draft, so there's a little bit of like, oh, you went out and got our guy, and like this front office, their approval rating, like, Bub Carrington was a huge Wizards fan base darling in that draft. So was Kyshawn George, and same with Cam Whitmore. So to go back and get like the other guy the fan base liked, I think was at least big, for their approval rating overall. And the thing with Cam, like My take on the guys they've drafted so far, like there's positional size. There's all like every one of these dudes has a little bit of like passing ability and some playmaking. Like they're all maybe slightly better than you expect as like not really ball stoppers, which is great. But they're all also kind of willing to like take a back seat a little bit too much, in my opinion. I want like a rational confidence guy, like I mentioned, and so like you need Cam Whitmore to pass a little bit, but I'm okay with the dude that just wants to come in and like rip rims down and kill dudes out
Right.
there, and maybe that just rubs off on people enough. And I think he's another guy that if they got that sort of dynamic guard, like maybe him and Tre having some minutes together would be great. But he's more of a slasher to me, and I'd actually maybe use him more as like a small ball, four sometimes
Hmm.
because he's just like sturdily built, but he's not maybe the best shooter of his own. So just let him be a power player and attack the rim, and just can you get him to do some like I don't know Bruce Brownie type things as like a short roll passer and stuff like that too. Like that, if there's just enough playmaking there and enough shooting to unlock the physical gifts, I think he's the amazing kind of guy to take a flyer on if you're this Wizards team. There's like literally reasonable reward and no risk to do it. So I loved that move.
Yeah, and I don't think the like I just don't think the passing is ever. Maybe I'll be wrong. The short roll
No,
thing is not really something I considered. So if you have the spacing around him, maybe.
that's got
Um,
to be what it is. If you're playing him around other wings that can shoot, and I don't
yeah,
know.
I think, and a lot of this will depend on the environment too. I actually think that his shooting, he's going to end up being like this lights out guy he will score off the catch.
Mhm.
He can even score off motion, and so that I'm so interested to see what his offensive fit
Yeah,
looks like in the larger ecosystem. I thought it was a home run move by them. Like they were the second round picks they gave up were like real second round picks, but to
sure.
get someone with his pedigree when they have not 1 but 2 years left on their rookie scale is actually kind of insane.
Yeah, yeah. No one can really explain to me. I know enough guys here locally to be able to ask like what they thought went on with him draft wise, and I still don't have like a great like concrete answer of why he fell. So you got a dude that was top five on draft boards for like a large portion of the year, which was probably too high, but he dropped to 20 and you got him as a reclamation project already. Like cool. Like what? There's just literally no harm in trying to do that, and I wish they would do that as many times as possible between now and whenever they're good again.
I gave up trying. I asked like a couple of like Rockets people that I
Yeah,
interact with, not Rockets team sources. I'm not sourcing anything here, and just
sure.
nobody had answers. And I gave up, and I just assumed that we would eventually find out. And now that you mentioned, it, I'm like, yeah, it's 2 years later. We still haven't really found out the
That's
reason.
weird, right? Like you usually hear something leaks out at some point. Uh, but the one thing I'll say is like he's been an underwhelming defender, and if anyone's not familiar with like Cam Whitmore, why he was an exciting prospect, like go watch him do like FIBA under 18 stuff for Team USA. He was just everywhere and like swarm dudes and like overwhelm people with physicality and athleticism. And I don't know, never really saw him do that when he got in limited minutes with the Rockets. And maybe some of that was just frustration. But this Wizards team, like the young guys are exciting because they profile as better than average defenders almost across the board. Like Kyshawn George, who I'm sure we're going to get to probably next or whenever, like he was kind of all over the place and he's an octopus and he's long and like Cam Whitmore could do more of those things. So I hope he rubs off on them with offensive aggressiveness, but I hope they kind of hold him accountable defensively. And if not, like it's not quite as exciting to me as a move if he's not going to do much on that end.
Yeah, you mentioned that maybe he's frustrated, so perhaps if he's having a bigger role, it'll get him easier buy-in. But I also wonder, I like with a lot of players, the buy-in when you're getting closer to that second contract, he's
Yeah.
extension eligible after next season,
Right.
and
Is it
so if
real? Yeah.
right. So, well, no, not even is it real. Is that going to convince him to
Mm.
have the give a fuck factor on the
Yeah. It's,
defensive end, basically?
yeah.
So that'll be something because the Rockets had a similar ecosystem of it's all these young dudes who really
Mm-hmm.
work on the defensive end, and you're like, well, why didn't that rub off on Cam Whitmore?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk Keyshawn George.
Okay.
How are you feeling about him after his rookie year?
I love him. I don't really
The
have.
hair, is that what it is?
It's probably the hair. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just cool looking dude, and he's funny and he's charming, and I just could keep going on and on about Keyshawn, but no, he's just. I think there's something there, and this is like a stupid way to phrase this. I realize in advance, so take this with a grain of salt. But it's not like a scientific way to analyze a guy. But certain dudes just kind of move differently on a basketball court, and like for as big as Kyshawn is, like, this is a dude who grew late and he feels like he's still kind of growing into his limbs here a little bit, but just like a very fluid, smooth guy on the court. And he'll do some things where, like, oh, like he showed a little wiggle here as he's grabbing and going through traffic, and he'll like do a swaggy step back and like brick it horribly. But like the fact that he took it is just, I don't know, is intriguing to me. I actually, I might be higher on him than any of the other young guys currently on this core, which is maybe crazy to say. I think the shooting will take a big jump forward this year. Seeing it a little bit already here in some international play, like it just looks a little more fluid. And not that it was broken, like he shot well at Miami, but on low volume. But it just last year he started off so bad. I feel like that's almost, you almost have to wipe the slate clean and start over the whole next year for somebody when you're just that bad out of the gate as a rookie. But I buy the shooting, and so now he's got enough handle to get downhill. I think there's some playmaking chops there.
Yeah.
So like he's exciting to me as a wing that can just do a little bit of everything. And I thought he was way ahead of schedule defensively. I expected him to do very little on that end, but he's got good feel and he's got good positioning on things. So he gets steals and some blocks and some runouts from it. And he's got some real ceiling to me.
He's definitely a eye test and vibes guy for the first 2 years of his career.
100%.
If the efficiency's not there, you just dismiss it because he looks the part of like someone who could be even a connector. The passing, yeah, I certainly see it. I have not seen any of his time with Canada, but I know he should, because Summer League worried me a little bit when he shot like 24% from three or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But he's at like 50-something% with Team Canada. Have you seen any of that? Like, what is it that makes you buy into like him being able to hit those shots?
He just looks confident in taking it, and I don't know if that's just I had a whole summer to put in work and like do my thing, and now I'm feeling good, or I get to be more of the guy on this Canada team. Like, I'm not really sure what's driving that change, other than just like some guys shoot because they have to shoot in certain situations. Last year, I think he shot to like try to show he could make it. And this year, I feel like he just like clean shooting the ball because like the situation presents itself and he expects him to go in. So it just, you almost don't feel him thinking so much about it as he's kind of playing through some of these situations. So we'll see if it holds up. But I expect him to be like mid 30 to high 30s kind of guy, which is.
People are going to say some inflammatory things about him this season if he's a high 30s three-point shooter, and they will all be deserved. And
I will be one of the people saying those things. Yeah, exactly.
And I will be aggregating what you say on this podcast and just agreeing with it. The more I think about this team, though, and you could view it through the lens of, like, maybe it makes Kyshawn George's role easier. Certainly would help Alex Sarr, maybe even Coulibaly, maybe even Tre Johnson. They need like the primary playmaker. That, or it needs to be like this playmaking by committee approach. Can Bub Carrington be that guy? I've gone back and forth.
I don't think so. Personally, I'm not saying he can't. I wouldn't bet on it being the most likely outcome. Is probably the way I'd frame it. Everybody talks about this dude as like a psycho competitor and a crazy hard worker. Like that's been a thing here locally from people that don't have any need to BS that kind of stuff. So like I buy it, and people around the team say that sort of thing of like, that's the first name that comes up every time is like, this is the dude who wants to win every drill and win every scrimmage. So I love those sorts of things. I don't know if like the physical tools are there to be like that elite, like high offensive option for him. Like he's not too bursty necessarily. He's got decent size, but he's not going to like he's not Cade Cunningham where he's so big, he's seeing over the defense the whole time. Like, so if you're not one of those two things, I just think it's hard to be like a starting primary initiator in the league of like a high end kind of guy. If he's your fifth starter to run the offense because you have some elite wings, like that's fine. But to me, if you get to a situation where he's like your first guard off the bench, now you've got a really good team because he can be on ball, he can be off ball, like he's got enough size to guard ones and twos. Like he would be an elite roster unlocker, I think, if you had the ability to bring him off the bench.
He's like, this isn't like a perfect analog. There's an on-ball poise there with him, especially when he gets into the lane, can know how to maintain his dribble. But just, I don't even know who the right comp of a player is. It feels like post-prime CP3 with the way that he just doesn't get to the basket, and you can maybe trust the efficiency is not the same,
Yeah.
but you could trust him maybe to make the right decisions. But I like that version of CP3 could still drive an offense, and I even thought about Malcolm Brogdon, who was just his teammate, but that's not like his drives were a little bit more Prime Brogdon's drives were more forceful, and I don't know. I'm with you. I need to see more of him, of course. I just don't know if he has that extra gear to where there's either going to be a downhill force or just a thrust about the way he plays.
The majority, I'm not saying all, but like greater than 51% of Wizards fans, I feel confident in this percentage, are obsessed with his ability to make tough mid-range pull-ups over guys, and he can do this at an elite level, right out of the gate as a rookie. And I'm more of the, but why does he have to take so many of them, thing? Because it's hard to maximize value on that particular shot if you're not like a star player on a team, and maybe being surrounded by more shooting would help him have a little bit more space to drive and get a little further to the basket. So I don't think it's totally a him thing, but I just don't ever seeing it take a big enough jump where he can be like the guy driving an offense necessarily. And that's okay for me too. I think he's just like a really good, solid contributor here for a long time, fringe starter kind of guy.
How many free throws does he get this coming season?
Not enough. Whatever the number is, it just sort of probably won't be enough for me too. And he's a solid dude. Like there was this play even on opening night where like Drew Holiday tried to like back him down, and like he held his ground, and like we're like, oh, okay, like he's tough there. So honestly, actually, maybe it is kind of like Drew Holiday-ish offensively. Like he's not that kind of defender, but like a little bit of a tweener. Not crazy athletic, but he can create enough for people and just be sort of solid. Like maybe that's the kind of role you look for, is like the lower end offensive kind of guard. Like not a top half offensive point guard in the NBA, but just solid enough. He won't be the top 1% defender that Drew is, so it's a little harder to get away with that, I think.
Offensively, because I think he'll be better than defensively. It's like, what is like a lesser version, or it's DeMar DeRozan without the athleticism, like live from the mid range, but I think he's a real, like DeMar DeRozan's passing over the last half decade or 6 years for the most part. I feel like that's a terrible comp. Bub Carrington's giving me a headache now. I'm trying to find a good comp for him.
I had said like Gabe Vincent coming out of Pittsburgh, but he's not that kind of player now in the NBA, so it's just. Yeah, it's a weird analog, and I think maybe that's why it's harder for me to envision the ceiling with him, is I don't have a guy to like point to and be like, that's the model I want you to follow.
So before getting into kind of some of, we'll call them the accessory youngsters, excuse me, this team just has so many dudes. How do you see them going about juggling playing time, especially when they're on expiring contracts, probably won't be around long term, but you have a CJ McCollum, you have a Khris Middleton there as well. So how did they also juggle that dynamic of having two veterans who should still play?
I think they're going to have to pick their spots a little bit with this and kind of ease into some things. Like Khris Middleton is not going to play 82 games this year, even if he's on the Wizards roster the entire time, and nor should he. I don't think his minutes are going to be as high as they've been in previous stops. Same kind of thing for Khris Middleton. Like if you want to extract trade value from those guys, you want to keep them fresh and rested enough to help their new team. So do neither of them play on second nights of back-to-backs, or do you alternate them and give them kind of like more shift work between the two of them? Or if they're even a little sore one night, you just give them the whole night off. Like there's no incentive to drive either of these guys into the ground. It's, can you show that they're healthy enough to have some value for some other team that may want to trade from them, and then also extract like all the off-court value, from them from a leadership perspective and things like that. But they'll just make some of these guys' lives easier enough that you want to play them with a mix of the young guys. Like I trust CJ McCollum to mostly do the right thing on an NBA court, provide some spacing. Be an outlet offensively, do some of the ball handling, some of the creating, just make everybody lives a little bit easier. Khris Middleton's going to just shoot it at a reasonable clip. I don't know if he can defend anybody anymore, but maybe that's okay in Washington around some other athletic, rangy defenders. So I think they're like the Wizards are going to be bad. Like, this may be the worst record in the league, but like, so this is going to sound stupid. Like, they may just be floor raisers for their minutes when they're on the court for everybody else. And I think that's valuable. I would be shocked if both of them are on the roster after the trade deadline, just because it
Right.
doesn't make a ton of sense to do that. And maybe you keep one of them just because they're happy to be in that mentor phase of their career. I don't know where their heads are at, but at some point, I would love to see them find a way to get Will Riley and guys like that some minutes, at least in the second half of the year. So that's kind of a weak answer to your question, I think, Dan. But like, we'll see is sort of the answer. And I don't really have a great enough feel for Brian Keefe yet to know how he'll make that work.
Also, man, Bub Carrington can just learn from Khris Middleton. That's a dude that never got to the rim in his prime. So, and
Yeah,
was a secondary ball handler. So there you go. The
I
thing
like
I'm
it.
clocking is that Khris Middleton and CJ McCollum are still here. Not that there hasn't been a trade, but because of
Right.
the way the CBA works now, I feel like we're going to see more off-season buyouts. And
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton being two examples. The fact that they're still in Washington is leads me to believe one of two things: that the Wizards are prepared to make some in-season moves that might involve taking back salary, being compensated for it, or they really believe that these are two guys who can rehabilitate their value to where they're getting value for them on the way out, where they're not just these vehicles to take on more money. And so there's still time for that to change, obviously, but that is something that I've clocked a little bit just in the age we are, where it feels like these two guys, I don't think, if we're being honest, I don't think any of them wants to be on a team like Washington right now. They'd rather be contending for a title. And yes, they want to get paid, so maybe this could also be a reflection of the market for them,
Mm-hmm.
where Marcus Smart knew he was going to wind up with the Lakers. But it's just something that I've clocked because the way it works, I could have seen one of them maybe brokering a buyout before the season started.
Whether it's them doing it themselves or who they talk to in the local media to do it for them, like this front office has not been afraid to sort of let it slip that they're prioritizing sending veteran guys to good situations. So I think from a goodwill perspective, they've got now some track record to say, hey, just be patient with us. We will try to send you somewhere you can be in a good spot. Like, just give us the time to try to get the most possible out of it. And like I said up front, I could maybe nitpick they held on to a few of these older guys a little too long and didn't get the most value from them. But they seem content to just play this thing all the way down to the wire with guys. And when they do make a move, it's, we'll let Marcus Smart go early and go be somewhere he wants to be, or we'll send Kyle Kuzma to a playoff contender, and we'll send Jordan Poole somewhere where they may have a blueprint of being good enough, but he can also still be the man and, shoot 20 times a game. So, like, they're putting guys in situations where it seems like they want to be. So if I'm McCollum and Middleton's agents, I'm like, okay, they'll take care of me, so I can kind of just let this play out a little bit.
Can we go through some of your impressions on, as we'll call them, the accessory youngster? I can't
I
fucking
like
talk today,
accessory, to
man.
be honest with you. Like, I think that's
The
like a new
accessory youngster.
it's the new NBA term we just created. And I just thought something real quick, Dan. Like, poor man's Emmanuel quickly. Could that be where Carrington goes? Like, that kind of player?
I'm just wondering, like, even quickly just has like a little bit more like aesthetic pop to him than
He does.
Bub Carrington does. But that would be like if he could score like on the ball the way that Emmanuel
Yeah,
quickly can from floater range and like getting off those threes. Like, yeah, hell yeah, that would be a great outcome for him.
great.
So let's start with how you feel about AJ Johnson.
I don't, unfortunately. And
I
that,
was listening to your summer like
yeah.
reaction podcast. You did not seem like you were an AJ Johnson guy.
Yeah, I just kind of don't see the vision personally. It's like Hamidou Diallo 2.0. Like, the Wizards tried to like see if there was anything there and kick the tires on him because he was a Will Dawkins guy in OKC. Like, you're basically a power forward on offense. Like, like there's not a whole lot of like. He's not like an elite ball handler because he can't really break anybody. He doesn't get anywhere with his ball handling, if that makes sense. Like, the dribble moves might be nice, but doesn't really shoot it. It doesn't really play make much other than like in fast breaks he may kind of like skip the ball ahead a bit, but he's just so slender and hasn't filled out at all yet through a couple years that how does he guard like anybody at a high level enough to like use those physical tools? So I can't see the path forward for what he is. And this team could use a guy that's so explosive he can get into the paint, but like teams aren't going to worry about that because he's just going to bounce off of defenders and they're going to sag off of him until he can shoot enough. So there's too many things there that still have to go a long way that I can't really see the vision.
How do you feel about Will Riley, who took a lot more threes during Summer League than I was anticipating?
Yeah, the first game was rough. That was another tough Wizards performance. And then the second game was apparently good enough. They felt content to kind of soft shut him down. I know they attributed it to like a thumb injury or whatever, but, they think they were okay with that performance being the last time people saw him. I don't know. I think he's a fine guy to take a flyer on. Another kind of guy that checks some boxes for them. Little bit of a late grower, can do more, like has good positional size, has some playmaking potential longer term here, and like can put the ball in. Like they want guys who can all pass, dribble, shoot at every position, which is a noble guy, goal to be in search of. So I think there's a long way to go for him, and it's going to be like 3 years before you can have like a real opinion on what his deal is.
I think if he gets any minutes, they won't be short on guys who will make hustle plays. He seems like that's going to be the type of player he'll be. And maybe
cool
that's why they felt comfortable buying out Marcus Smart, is they say, hey, look, we got Will Riley, but we don't need Marcus Smart.
Yep.
I'm kidding there for anybody who did not detect that.
No, he's an elite defender from day one. Like, this is like the Spider-Man meme between he and some of the elite defenders. I don't know. He tried a little bit in Summer League to just be competitive on that end, and I think that's the end he's actually maybe further away on, like, than the offense. So if this is the kind of dude you want to take a flyer on in the 20s, like, I'm never going to have an issue with it.
Dillon Jones.
Completely out. Yeah, I don't get that one.
OKC basically traded him twice, so I don't blame you.
Yeah, that's not a great sign to like some of their buddies from OKC. So maybe they were just happy to give him a landing spot. I saw nothing in Summer League to sort of change that opinion for me. Just another guy where I just kind of can't see what he is in the NBA, and I don't know that there's enough space on this roster to give him enough chances to figure it out. Like, he was crazy productive at Weber State, but he also had crazy high volume and usage. Like, he's never going to get to do that on an NBA team. So I just don't know what the other swing skills are there that help him carve out a niche for himself.
I do have a soft spot for Tristan Vukcevic, and I'm kind of surprised that, one, it feels like he's been on a two-way for like 8 years somehow. I know that's not legal or possible, but also I'm surprised that he wasn't converted yet. I know they have a bunch of salaries on the roster, but I might prefer to just have him at guaranteed money than Malaki Branham at this point.
He's so hard to judge. Actually, I think his game isn't all that hard to evaluate. It's hard to evaluate their opinion of his game because, like, they're keeping him around, so there's enough there that they're intrigued. But they drafted him, didn't feel the need to bring him over, then brought him over at the end. He played really well the final 7 games of the year, which is like Fool's Gold season. So you can't read a whole lot into it, but he did what they wanted him to do. And they're like, cool, we're going to convert you from a standard contract to a two-way after 7 really good games, which you never see. And then he came over like late before Summer League and was like barely in shape enough to get up and down the court. I don't know if it was an injury. Barely played his second Summer League, and they shut him down after like a half a game. And then he didn't play for most of the first 2 months of the season with a knee contusion, which I've never seen a knee bruise keep somebody off the court for months. He was just not great for the Go-Go early, the G League team. And then kind of came around at some point and was like super productive on the offensive end and made some shots and did some passing. And you're like, oh, okay, like we're back to seeing the vision. To me, ultimately, like best case scenario, he's like a rotation big. Can he be Sandro Mamukelashvili, like one of those kind of guys? Like, he does some exciting stuff offensively. I just don't know who he guards either. So I'm not, I could take it or leave it personally.
Do you have any thoughts on Malaki Branham, who seems like if you put Cam Whitmore in a shrinking machine and then had him not pan out as a player, that's who. And look, I was in love with Branham after his rookie year. He shot like 1,000,000,000% on floaters. I was like, oh, this dude, like he's got, and then no, not since then, nothing basically.
He also strikes me as a guy that maybe still has some like of the irrational confidence offensively left over from like his college role. So I'm not mad at it in practice. Is like maybe he'll go out and get buckets and give a tough cover for people to cover, in that setting. My hunch is he's probably not an impactful member of this roster if he's here longer term. Of the two guys they got, I actually probably preferred Blake Wesley, the one who
Oh,
they've
really?
moved on from, just from a, like, maybe he can be a point of attack defender that they don't have a ton of like guards to do that. But Branham, I don't think he's really ever going to guard anybody. And is there enough offense there that it kind of offsets that? I don't know. But again, not a guy I'm mad at them taking a flyer on. Like, if you think there's something there, like, go do it.
I guess worst case scenario, and this isn't just about Branham, but the roster at large, is they've probably created a culture of competition to where it's, if you're not going to perform, like, someone's right there to take your minutes. So there's probably some value in that.
That's something the Wizards hadn't done well when they did have young players in the past. It was just like they could look left and right, and it's like, okay, that guy's never going to take my minutes, so I'm good. Like, I can just kind of do my thing. Like, I think so. I think you nailed it. And I think that's been very intentional. Like, I actually loved Jamir Watkins, their second round pick this year, maybe more than I liked the Will Riley pick, to be honest, even though he went 20 spots earlier, because like that's a dude that is going to compete with people from like the jump and views himself better than anybody else views himself. So like he's going to try to take lunch money from people, and I think this team needs that.
I guess the only place where there wouldn't be a culture of competition is the big man spots. Like, what do we got? Sarr, Bagley, and then maybe Vukcevic, and that's
really it
at this rate.
Yeah, we might see some small ball lineups with Kyshawn George at the 5, halfway through the year.
Oh, hey, you're talking to the right audience then.
I know.
I'll watch a lot of Wizards games if that becomes a staple. Are you ready to enter the cookie cutter portion of the podcast? We've talked about a few of them, but just as a review, what do you view as this team's like single biggest need or weakness?
The guy. I think this year's draft is really the year to go get it. Like, I'm really excited about the 2026 draft class, and whether it's a Darren Peterson to just be the break you down guard, or an AJ DeBonsa can come in and be like that elite playmaking, scoring, tough bucket getting wing, or Cam Boozer can slot perfectly next to Alex Sarr. Like, they just need one really big, high-level talent infusion to kind of make all these other pieces work, I think. Like, if you could shift each of them down one major slot in the pecking order, I think it becomes a little easier to see. And then you add one big-time free agent, like, or trade partner, whoever.
There's a free agent? I'm like, what? Does that happen anymore, man?
That is now done. Yeah, that's an artifact of the past, I think. But, yeah, you can salvage somebody from another team or a distressed asset or whatever. Like, that's just probably where I think they need to go. And just shooting in general. When this team's good again, they can't do it with that front court that we just talked about. Like, Sarr, I think, has that high-end defensive upside we talked about, but he's going to get, like, bullied by certain bigs in the league, the ones who bully everybody. But Marvin Bagley is not a defender at this point. He's also not a shooter. Vukcevic can't guard anybody. So, like, it's tough, right? Like, it's they're going to have to get another guy in the front court somewhere to be semi-competitive, I think.
So when you're talking about the guy, if you had to pick one that you believe has the best chance of becoming that already on the roster between, I'm assuming it's Tre, Sarr, and Coulibaly, as of right now, who are you? Unfair question without seeing Tre's rookie season, but who would you identify right now?
Again, I like all of these guys. Like, I like them a lot, and I think they could all be, like, really good 2 through 5 on a good team, all things considered. I think Tre is the guy that has the best shot at being better than that, just by process of elimination. Like, I feel like I've seen enough of these other guys that I know that there would be a lot of things that have to go right for one of them to turn into that guy. But they could be, like, elite supporting members in that cast.
That's interesting, but, you're kind of right, because even if Coulibaly turns into Jaylen Brown, I don't know how many people I will find out this year, I guess, without Jason Tatum or anybody else.
Is he the one on a good team?
Right. And then with Sarr, it's okay, even if he turns into Anthony Davis, one of the biggest, like, Anthony Davis has been a top 10 NBA player for in a bunch of seasons, but we tend to associate, and I don't think this is incorrect to do so, like, the guy needs to drive your offense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So
I think you just nailed it, right? Like, so much would have to go right for Alex Sarr to be Anthony Davis, and he's still best suited as your number 2 guy on a team. That's tough.
Yeah, I hadn't given that. I've just been saying like, oh yeah, like I could see anyone, and then it's now you just made me, recalibrate. No,
I think
Wizards are
any of
fucked.
them,
I'm down on the
even
Wizards.
any of them, which I think is great, including Kyshawn George, who I would put in that mix too. Like I really truly believe like they could all turn into a third best guy on like that's they all have the ceiling to do that on a really good playoff team, which is great to have that many irons in the fire that I don't think they've missed on any of these picks so far. Like I'm not counting like Will Riley and stuff that we haven't seen play yet, but like I feel very confident Tre Johnson is going to be a good NBA player. I feel very confident Bub, Bilal, Kyshawn, Alex Sarr will all be good NBA players. So to have that hit rate to fill out the roster around them, you just need somebody for them all to orbit around now, I think.
Is there something flying under the radar about this team? Strength, weakness, storyline, whatever that deserves some shine.
They're going to play really fast, and there's a lot of young, fresh legs on this team. And Kyle Kuzma was like actively point shaving for a portion of last season, and Poole just like didn't like he tried, but wasn't going to like drive enough winning by himself just based on the way he plays to make them, you know, surprise anybody realistically. So this team was just less competitive more nights last year than I expected. And I don't see that being the case this year. I think this is going to be a team that isn't going to win many games, but all the veteran teams in the league are like, oh God, we got to play them on like a cold January night. Like that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, at least, just like some chaos.
Beginning with the starting lineup and then through the reserves, who ends up being the top 10 most used players on the squad?
I think who it is to start the year and who it is to finish the year probably looks very different. That would be my hunch at the very least. So like I don't know how much a guy like a Cam Whitmore is like how heavily he's in the rotation early. Like I think he has to play, but I would be very surprised if Bub Carrington doesn't start, just given what we saw last year. I think Coulibaly almost certainly starts, given what we saw last year. I think Alex Sarr definitely starts, given that there's just no one else that could theoretically start on an NBA team in the front court here. So that's pretty interesting. Is there a world where Tre Johnson could start right out of the gate? We'll see. Is CJ McCollum okay with coming off the bench, or do they want to show him enough to play? Is Khris Middleton just going to stay healthy enough to be consistently the starting, 3 or 4 on this team? Or do they go with Kyshawn George because he's ready to take the jump? Like, my gut is you start McCollum and probably Middleton, definitely one of the two of them, probably both early. And then they're slowly, maybe not even that slowly, supplanted by Tre and Kyshawn would be my next best get. I think Corey Kispert is probably the most likely to get traded guy on the roster because it
Seems
just
like he could get squeezed pretty easily out of the rotation just because they have so many dudes, and what is he to them long term?
yeah, like they definitely can't really afford to give up guys who can shoot yet. But if CJ makes
Fair.
enough shots, if Tre makes enough shots, if Kyshawn makes the jump, I think if Middleton makes some shots, like he becomes pretty expendable. So I'd love to, you know, behind the scenes for people like you have Justin Champagnie as like maybe the first guy off, right? Like it's
It
I
hurts.
just can't see them not finding a way to get him minutes at some point during the year because he was just such a positive contributor and just the guys seem to have fun playing next to him. So that's gonna be interesting. But do the Cam Whitmore, Justin Champagnie, you guys like do they kind of cannibalize each other's minutes in a roster like that? Like it's probably one of the two of them plays meaningful minutes, and is it the incumbent or the guy with the higher pedigree? I'm curious to kind of see how that battle shakes out a little bit more. And then Bagley just has to play by virtue of you need someone else over 6'8" to play minutes on an NBA team.
Now, if you decide you don't, that opens up a lot of different pods. Like Corey Kispert and Justin Champagnie could end
I'm
up playing. There you
I'm
go.
all about it. I'm like, just give me that 40 minutes a game. It'd be cool.
This is always to some extent matchup dependent, but what do you think will be, let's say by the time the season ends, what do
Yeah.
you think is going to be their most used closing unit?
I hope it's Tre Johnson, Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Kyshawn George, Alex Sarr. That would be my hope personally. Like I think that's a fun group, and it's, Johnson can shoot. Like everybody except maybe Sarr and Coulibaly can definitely shoot, and the other two are at least threats to do it. So could you potentially play fast and 5 out and be fairly switchable? Like that would be the lineup I would enjoy seeing games closed, more often than that.
I think there's part of me that if you really wanted to get like ultra switchable, like let's throw Justin Champagnie in there for Tre Johnson.
Cool.
I don't know what that does to your offense, but
Sure.
Oh well.
Yeah, I dig that though.
Is there a weirdo lineup you want to see Brian Keefe try this season?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one a little bit. I think it's some combination of Tre Johnson at the 1 next to Coulibaly, Cam Whitmore, Kyshawn George. And then like Champagnie would be cool, but like maybe it's probably just still Alex Sarr. But even that I think is kind of just intriguing. But to me, if you just took like all of the 6'5" to 6'8" guys on this roster and put them out there together at one time, I would just personally enjoy seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, you sold me on that. I probably would have went. I could have went with something different, but it needs to be like Coulibaly, Kyshawn George, Cam Whitmore. Let's just throw Khris Middleton and Justin Champagnie in there. We'll get like the nice little bet.
Yeah, that'd be at least weird enough to be something other teams would kind of like eyebrow raise you for. So I want to see that.
The problem with that exercise for the Wizards is that they're so barren of big men after Alex Sarr that it becomes inherently hard to build a weirdo lineup in the sense that, well, no, like Brian Keefe just might have to play that unit. He might not have a choice.
I mean, we could go the other way and just go like with the least athletic group you could think of and just put, CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, Khris Middleton, Marvin Bagley, and Tristan Vukcevic out there together or something like that.
That would be something. I don't know if it'd be something good, but it would certainly
It would be
something.
5 people on a basketball court at the very least.
I think they'd be able to limit their turnovers. I'd say that about that.
I feel good about
they
that.
Might be fine. Yeah. Before I ask you for some predictions, is there anyone about this team we haven't discussed that you think warrants some spotlight?
Trying to think. I mentioned him already, so I'm just gonna do it again. I have a weird hunch that like Jamir Watkins is gonna find a way to get some minutes for this group. I just think he'll be a guy that I could see them finding some kind of role for. Essentially, like he just plays so hard and is gonna be just super competitive, and I feel like that's a thing they'll probably want to reward. They also just love Anthony Gill, so like he will play minutes for this team. He might actually be the third big air quotes on this team.
So he's like if he's actually going to play, he's not, but he's basically their Garrett Temple at this point.
He's their Garrett Temple, Udonis Haslem,
but is going to play. Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody would love to see him on the bench in a polo shirt, but he just is intent to keep playing, so more power to him. But like he will get minutes for this team at some point during the season, so we'll see.
What is he? I know very little about him. What is he offensively, though?
He is not, unfortunately.
Okay.
He's just like a very solid, play hard, energy, do the right thing, like would captain the winning team at the YMCA, every time kind of guy. And I'm not trying to disparage him like he's a YMCA player, but you know what I mean? Like just the dude that doesn't look flashy, but his groups keep winning games because he does smart stuff. Like that's coach on the floor, like all those kind of bad cliches, unfortunately. But they brought him in because he had one crazy season shooting the ball overseas, and they thought he was like a sniper, and he's not shot more than like 20% in a season with the Wizards, despite being a stretch forward. But he is like a Tony Bennett UVA guy, and he'll just do Tony Bennett UVA guy things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. He's how old is he? Is he 24? He's on the older end, right?
Anthony Gill?
Rookie. Yeah. Oh no, not Anthony Gill.
Oh,
sorry.
you meant Jamir Watkins?
Jamir Watkins, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I meant take back everything I just said the last 10 seconds before that. Jamir Watkins is old. He's maybe almost as old as Anthony Gill. He's like a 6'5", 24 or 25-year-old 6-year college player that's just gonna be skinny but tough defensively and cause havoc and run the floor and try to dunk on guys and take their hearts out of their chest while they're still beating, but not being quite good enough to do it yet. And the nice thing is he just got to the free throw line a ton at Florida State, and I think that at the very least can still translate. So we'll see.
I'm sold. He can be a member of one of the small ball units. With
Yeah,
Kyshawn
there you go.
George
I dig that.
Done. So, how many wins do you see this team ultimately ending up with? Factoring in that, will they steer out of wins at some point? And where do you see them landing in the Eastern Conference overall?
Yeah, 18 is the number I've been going with, like exactly 18. I don't know why that's the number. It just feels like it needs to be the number, just because. Yeah, that there. You mentioned it with the steering out of wins at some point. Like they may just organically be bad because they're small, and maybe that's why they were content to not add any front court players to this team. But they won 18 games last year, and it just feels like that's exactly. And they were 15 the year before that, though. But it just seems like they're probably on paper about the same like kind of team. So this is the draft class to like you kind of let yourself slip a little bit at the end of last year. So you probably need to do a better job this year, but then there may be just not as much competition for that worst spot. So maybe 18 wins keeps you in the bottom three, and that's good enough.
Yeah, because the only team that's trying to be what they are in the East right now is Brooklyn, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. And I don't even know of all the teams that even people might be low on, whether it's the Bulls or the Heat or the Raptors. I don't see any of those teams having the floor that Brooklyn or Washington
I don't think
would.
so.
I would be more worried about Washington racking up too many late season victories, though. Just if you have those teams that are kind of out of the play-in
Sure.
and they've decided to do the late season punt, Washington just has get rid of the veterans. You're just left with a bunch of guys who are going to play their asses off,
Yeah.
and that's that. Not concerning, but that could be something that hurts their draft stock.
I think the just again the front court being that on like underdeveloped just kind of prevents that from happening to a certain extent. Like you're just small and you can't rebound. It's just hard to win games, even when you're trying harder to win games than the teams you're playing against. So they did a little bit of that last year, I think, and like Bub Carrington had his hero moment in the last game of the season and won him a game, and like, but they still just dropped to the second worst record in the league. So it like even factoring that in, I still think they're probably safely in that bottom three mix at least.
Matt, this was great. Thank you so much for your time. Are you able to just to tell our listeners, viewers, where they could find you and all the great work that you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I promise to be a little more positive this year, just because I am more. So hopefully that came across. Like I'm excited about all the irons this team has in the fire, and yeah, Dan, I'm a listener to the show, so I've said that
Oh, we
every time.
know. We that one clip you put where the quote tweeted when Mort went off about Cooper Flag. I loved it, by the way. That was so fun.
Yeah, it's just Wizards fans like certain things to get bent out of shape about. So we look for that. But I love what you guys do. So being on here is super cool for me. So thanks for having me. If you want some more Wizard centric content, it's Believe in Wizards, myself and Jahadi White. And you want to read about the Wizards because you're a psycho, head over to Bulls Forever. We're happy to have anybody who wants to get on the bandwagon early.
No, this team might look. This team might be a good league pass team,
I think
like
so.
in terms of good reasons, to where they
Yeah.
might have had the comedic factor with Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole before.
Yeah.
This is you make jokes, but like there's gonna come March, people probably aren't gonna want to watch a lot of Wizards games, maybe. But like this team feels like it could be really fun. And if I said that last year, just I hope everyone forgot about it because I don't think I did.
If we talked about that last year, I didn't feel it. This year, I like truly feel it. Where like I think they will lose a lot of closer games this year, but like push good teams hard, and that should equate to like fun basketball.
Matt, thank you so much for all your time again. And as you know by now, I'll be pestering you again in the future. Thanks so much.
Can't wait.
And until next time, to everyone, shout out to the one, the only, fun enough to be on the Wizards if they were smart, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.